in a great palace. The Jews were by wealth and luxury and comfort. And in our day, as we think about it, Jesus, that what they were expecting him to be born in was a crib lined with purple lining. They were expecting Jesus to be in his Gucci onesie. They were expecting Jesus to have his baby Yeezys on. I'm talking about this king would be fly. He would be fly. He would be dripping. He would have that sauce. Come on, somebody. I got teenagers in my house. I'm like, what does all that mean? Yeah, oh, that's fly, Dad. That's dripping. I'm like, do I look dripping today or not? Come on now. But he would have sauce. But no one ever expected for the king to be born in poverty. Nobody expected that the king would be born in poverty, that he would be born in a cave with farm animals. They didn't expect the Savior, the Messiah, to be born and be from Nazareth. Nathanael even said, Nazareth? Does anything ever come good out of Nazareth? But that he would be born the son of a carpenter. And nobody ever predicted that the Son of God, the King of glory, that he would befriend prostitutes, that he would actually go out and that he would touch lepers, and that he would love those that the religious folks rejected. No one ever imagined that he would choose uneducated fishermen and despised tax collectors and rebellious troublemakers to be his very own disciples. Nobody ever imagined that. And nobody ever imagined that the king would ever forgive this woman that was caught up in adultery, that he would actually show her grace when the law says that she deserves to be stoned. Nobody anticipated that. And that he would confront the hypocrisy of the Pharisees, and he would overturn tables because they were in there disgracing his temple for profit. And no one, listen church, ever imagined that the King of Jews would ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. And that those that were cheering for his arrival were the outcasts, they were the immoral, that they were the rejected. And this is what happened. No one expected the king to stand trial for crimes that he didn't commit. Nobody expected that. Nobody ever imagined that an innocent king would be beaten, that he would be scourged and bruised and whipped, and he was stripped naked. And he was hung on an instrument of torture known as the cross. Dying a death that criminals deserve to die. Nobody expected that. Nobody imagined that. Nobody ever imagined this, that the creator, the king as creator would hang on a cross for his creation. And while he's hanging there, his creation would begin to mock him. They would begin to spit on him. And the king, while this is happening, that he would cry out begging for mercy from the Father when he yelled out, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then what he would ultimately do is, Father, my spirit I commit, my soul I commit into your hands. But see, what they expected was a king that would come and ultimately rule. They expected this knight in shining armor that would ride into town on a white horse, and he would come and wipe out the Roman Empire. That he would come in there and he would establish himself, and that they would be God's people, which they are God's people, but they would have ultimate dominion. They expected that. They expected the king to come and rule and reign. They didn't expect their king to come and die. They didn't expect that. That wasn't their anticipation. No one would have ever believed that they would bury a dead king in a borrowed cave. Nobody anticipated that. And then 3 days later, the stone would be rolled away, and the tomb would be empty, and Jesus would reign. He would be alive. He would be risen, because our King, Jesus, listen guys, is alive right now. He's alive here today. Somebody give the Lord a clap of praise, because the tomb was empty, and Jesus sits on the throne. So this morning, as we were going through this story, there's some things that I want you guys to recognize. There's 3 different responses that we've seen in this text. And there were different responses of how we respond to Jesus. And I think that many times what happens, church, is we can be guilty of every single one of these three responses that we see here in the text this morning. So we're going to look at three different responses to the Jesus as king. And the first one we seen was Herod. The first one that we see is Herod. And this is what Herod did. Herod opposed Jesus as king. He opposed Jesus being the King of the Kings. Because this is what happened. The Magi asked Herod about the newborn king of the Jews. And what does it say? Go to chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. And it says, Herod was, underline this, deeply disturbed. That Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. And he called a meeting with the leading priests and the teachers of religious law and asked, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? And here, if you look at it, if you look at the text, you're like, man, dude, here's the opportune time for you to actually meet the Messiah. See, Herod wasn't a Jew. He was an Edomite. But here he is. He's been putting all this work into the temple, not knowing that he's getting ready for this very baby that he's trying to reject. He was getting it all ready. God was using this Gentile king to get it ready for his son to come and reign and rule. Not the eternal rule, just at the time. The King of Jews. Let me back that up and rephrase that. He was preparing it for God's son to come to earth. And that he would have this temple, right? And so this is what happened. He had the opportune time, but he was deeply disturbed. He was actually troubled. And what did he do? He called a meeting to find out where the King of the Jews would be born. And he didn't ask them so he can go worship him. He wanted to know so that he can conspire against him. He didn't want to know so he could go worship him. He wanted to know so he can conspire against him. And can you imagine, if you would, feeling so disturbed and troubled about actually meeting the Messiah? The very one that the prophets actually wrote about. And as we look at it, you see that this trouble that he felt is a testimony of the greatness of Jesus, even as he was a child. That the trouble he felt is a testimony of the greatness of Jesus, even as a young child. And it's a testimony that Jesus will, listen guys, Jesus will either rattle you or he's going to change you. When we have an encounter, we believe that a moment with Jesus will bring forth a lifetime of change. It'll bring forth a lifetime of transformation. But he's going to either rattle you or he's going to change you. But Herod was this jealous man. He was very vindictive. Like, I wrote that in my Bible, like vindictive. When I read that, I'm like, man, he's vindictive. And this is what Herod would do. He would eliminate, listen to me guys, he would eliminate anybody that he felt threatened by. He even had 2 of his very own sons killed. Did you guys know that? This is how wicked and evil that Herod was, that he would have his own 2 sons killed. He would have his right-hand man killed. He would have them excommunicated, killed, whatever you want to use. I don't know what you kids use. I don't even know why I'm trying to use slang from today, but he would have them killed. He would murk them. Come on, somebody. But even Augustus, the Roman Empire, said this about Herod. And it says this. It says, Augustus the Empire had said bitterly that it was safer to be Herod's pig than to be Herod's son. What? Say, what? It was safer for you to be his pig in the pig pen than to be his son. Because Herod was this evil man. And if you think about it, like, how can he be so evil? Why wouldn't he just go down there to go worship Jesus, the King of the Jews? But the reality is that that's how many of us get at sometimes. The same way that Herod is, we get the same way. When we know that God is actually there, he's knocking on the door of our hearts, he's knocking on the door of our lives. We know that he wants to come in, we know that he wants to change, we know that he wants to transform us. But we get disturbed. We begin to feel troubled. Look, I know that's God, but I'm just not ready for all that. I don't want I don't want no change. What you talking about? My life is going great right now, but everything around you is falling apart. And this is what we say. We say, I don't need religion. Go to church. Nah, I'm good. I'm fine. I can do this on my own. I can figure out this life on my own. I don't want nobody trying to control me. I don't want nobody trying to tell me what to do. I don't need nobody or nothing to come in my life and begin to change and transform. I have my routine. I love it. I'm going to stick to it. I don't care what anybody says. That's how you and I can be. But Herod was this jealous man. He was jealous and disturbed. So disturbed, like mentally disturbed. Emotionally disturbed when he heard about the King of the Jews, that he had all the young boys 2 years younger murdered. He had them murdered. And we think, how can this man do that? How can he actually send out a decree to have these young children do that? It's because of that jealousy. And it's how Herod would oppose Jesus as king. He would have actually opposed Jesus as being the king. And church family, listen, online here in person, you and I, listen, we can be the exact same way. Why? Because we get defensive trying to defend and keep those little sins hidden in our life. Those ones that we think that nobody can see, we try to hide them. We try to sweep them under the carpet. And it's those areas that we try to hide from God that God actually wants to come in and he wants to invade and he wants to change and he wants to transform. But we get so defensive of what we have, and we get so defensive of this life that we actually live, that in turn we don't ever have any true surrender. We don't have any true surrender. And what we're trying to do through the process is we're trying to hold on to these little things that are hurting us. I know this is killing me, but I just want it. I just want it back. I know that I'm about to lose my wife, but give it back. And we're struggling with these things. We try to hold on to the very things that are hurting us. It's like if you go pick something up out of the fire and then you know it's burning hot, and what do we try? You're trying to hold on to it. You know how they trap monkeys? It's a genius idea. But they get the coconut, they put some holes in there, they drop something in there, and what the monkey does is they go over there and they put their hands in there trying to get